Welcome back to Taiwan versus the world. Today we'll get an update on the relationship between Taiwan and Somaliland. Then we'll explore the role played by Taiwan's Coast Guard in defending the island against China's grey zone warfare. And now let's begin with our conversation with our guests. Today, to discuss Taiwan and its international affairs, we will be looking at how Taiwan has created an uncanny relationship with Somaliland. And we have two people who looked into it quite closely, both of whom are based in Italy and are live with us on Radio Taiwan International, Guido Gargiulo and Michele Maresca. Guido and Michele, good morning for you in Italy.
Yes, good morning, everyone, and good evening to the Taiwan people. And of course, thank you so much for this call. And it's my pleasure and my honor to stay there with you and also with Michele. And great pleasure and great honor. And thank you so much for it. And how about you, Michele?
Thank you so much for having us. It's my pleasure to be here. Good morning to everyone in Italy and good evening to everyone in Taipei. It's my pleasure to be here and to discuss about this very, very significant topic in a geopolitical way, but also in a political and diplomatic one.
Absolutely, yes.
Gentlemen, I would ask you to introduce yourself so that our listeners know who you are. If you can tell me what you are working with at the moment.
Okay, fine. So, Michele, shall you start? And then after that, I go after you.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm a journalist and a geopolitical analyst with a particular interest in scenarios related to Taiwan, not only in a geopolitical way, but also as regard to the economic, commercial, industrial, and technological way. In my opinion, Taiwan is one of the most important states in the world. The significance of Taiwan is related not only to geopolitical issues, but also to the importance of the stateness, because Taiwan is an important state, a sovereign and independent state, which have to be recognized not only in a diplomatic way, but also in a substantial way. Taiwan deserves to be included in UN and UN agencies. And in Italy, we have to introduce the topic in a substantial way. We have to consider many issues. We have to consider what the Taiwanese people have to say. In my opinion, Julian does an incredible job, a fantastic job, because he wants to consider the opinion of Taiwanese people, not in as regard relations with China, but considering internal and external problems, internal and external topics, because Taiwan has a voice and we have to give it an important stage. And what about you, Guido?
Thank you so much, Michele. I definitely agree with you with this one. And about me, yes, I'm an independent analyst here in Italy and focusing especially on Taiwan and Indo-Pacific affairs. And I have a bachelor's degree in languages and cultures of Europe and the Americas. And I studied a lot of languages during my degree. And of course, I got in touch with a lot of languages and cultures. But I was deeply fascinated by the Chinese language and culture. And so I decided in 2022, I think, or 2021, I don't remember right now the exact date, but I started a project. I run a project still. I run this project that is called Osservatorio Esteri Taiwan. And it reports, is a project dedicated to providing daily insights on Taiwan and for the Italian audience too. And so I just regularly report news and things about Taiwan translated in Italian for the Italian audience, just because I just want to make sure that the Italian audience and Italy recognize Taiwan in some way, because of course nowadays, especially here in Italy, it feels like that we still struggle to get to know Taiwan's culture and Taiwanese culture. And of course, my goal in this case is just to continue to pursue this kind of project, because I just want the people to better know the reality of Taiwan. And same as Michele mentioned, and it's really important to attach importance to the Taiwanese and to the Taiwanese cause. And of course, it's very important also to make sure that people really get some information in pills, as I say, because I just want people to make, them to make sure that they have some curiosity to find out and to discover more things about Taiwan too. And yes, I think that same as Michele said, that you, Julian, you did, and you're still doing a great job in reporting news about Taiwan, but you just report things in a different perspective, and that's the most important thing, I would say, because you do a fantastic job with that. And I definitely agree. I couldn't agree more with Michele with this one. And so I'm very happy to explore right now the ties and these two nations about Taiwan and Somaliland. Thank you.
Well, thank you, gentlemen. I wasn't expecting that, but that's very nice of you. It's funny. I think some viewers are aware, some listeners may be aware that I'm Italian on the maternal side. So we are three, at least partly Italian people here talking about Taiwan. For some reason, all of us found ourselves attracted to this country. And it was, yes, striking me that both of you, from your positions in Italy, paid attention to a specific aspect of Taiwan's place in the world, which is its relationship with Somaliland, which is something that may appear quite strange from outside, because Somaliland is a small country. It's a country that has, yes, partial recognition internationally, but functions as a country for quite a long time, and which is very unknown and very much caught, entangled into the complex geopolitics of the Horn of Africa. So if I could ask briefly both of you to explain for any listeners who wouldn't be aware of it, what exactly is the situation right now between Taiwan and Somaliland?
Mm-hmm. Okay, right.
Yeah. Can I start, Guido?
Yes, of course.
Thank you. Well, the relationship between Taiwan and Somaliland is one of the most revealing diplomatic experiments, in my opinion, of the last decades. Somaliland sits at the intersection of the relationship between Somaliland and Taiwan sits at the intersection of contested statehood, geopolitics of the Red Sea and Asia, and great power rivalry. In my opinion, Israel's former recognition of Somaliland, the first state to recognize in Somaliland, they don't talk about recognizing, but to recognizing Somaliland at the end of 2025, in my opinion, adds a new layer to the complex relationship between them, and it helps us to reshape the environment for all the actors involved in this stage, in this scenario. Regarding Taiwan-Somaliland relationship, it was formalized in 2020 through representative offices, reciprocal representative office. This relationship is often described as a partnership between two political states that exist in a zone of international legitimacy that we have to consider. But if we have to talk about the particular fact that helped the partnership to work out, we have to consider many facts. First of all, the shared narrative, because Taiwan and Somaliland present themselves as democratic, stable actors in regions marked by instability. In the Horn of Africa, this is evident. We can also point out the mutual utility of this relationship, because Taiwan gains a foothold in the Horn of Africa. This is a symbolic diplomatic win, because Taiwan can help, and this is evident in this relationship. But also Somaliland, on the other way, gains technology, the development assistance, for example, and a partner that treat it as a de facto state. In my opinion, we also have to consider the strategic value of the relationship we have to talk about. For Somaliland, Taiwan provides medical cooperation, scholarships, and a narrative of legitimacy, because Taiwan treats Somaliland as a state. So others may follow because of it. The relationship, well, is not merely symbolic, but a practical, political, and mutually reinforcing one. Guido, do you agree with my vision?
With your view, yes, definitely, because of course I think that we have to attach importance about the relations between Taiwan and Somaliland, because you said that of course they share value space in a certain sense in this case, and of course it's really important for both of them to get this relation, especially for Taiwan, but also for Somaliland. But why is that? Because of course, on one hand, we do have Taiwan that for Taipei, Somaliland offers, for example, a strategic presence in the Horn of Africa, as you said. And that specifically right now in that situation, it offers access to the Gulf of Aden corridor as well. And it's very important right now just to discuss about it, especially in this period. And but it's also, I think, that is an independent partner from also the Beijing influence. So it's really important for Taiwan. But on the other hand, we do have also the importance that Somaliland attached to this relation, that of course with Taiwan, that provides, for example, cooperation, like technical cooperation, and also especially the most important thing is the international visibility that's really important right now, and political legitimacy. And we found out that we have a lot of areas of cooperation between the two countries, like for example, as you mentioned, agriculture, healthcare, information, and communication technology, and education, that there is still on work, the relation between these two countries about education and scholarships. And so, of course, I think that there are still some areas of cooperation between the two countries, especially right now, because the situation is changing, it's changing in a fast pace, because we have seen that, of course, we saw that also Israel recognized recently the state of Somaliland, right? And
Yeah.
so we are in a fast developing scenario in this case. And we do have a nation like Taiwan that you correctly say that, of course, they have been in a good relation since 2020, and they're still trying to develop, they're still trying to cooperate, because Taiwan knows the importance of Somaliland, and Somaliland knows the importance of Taiwan, because I think that they, in a certain sense, they also share the same, not only the same values, but also quite almost the same story, in the sense that, of course, many times we read, we write articles about the so-called One China policy and things like that. And during the years, yes, we saw that they maybe shared also the same story about, I would say, in a certain sense, the Somaliland in this case, we call the One Somalia policy in this case, because of course we do have a lot of things that we have to discuss in there. But I think that they share this vision and story about the One Somalia policy and the One China policy, because of course it's a situation that make the two countries feel very close about it. Do you agree with me, Michele?
Yeah, I really agree with you. And in my opinion, the one does something very concrete because it breaks China's monopoly on the one China, one Somalia narrative. On the one hand, Beijing insists that any dealings with Somaliland must go through Mogadishu, and that any Taiwan office is illegitimate,
Yeah.
But Taiwan and Somaliland ignore both claims in practice. Every time Taiwan seeks an MOU, opens a project, issues a joint statement with Somaliland, it chips away at the idea that the UN resolution and the One China principle make Taiwan untouchable in a diplomatic way. And in my opinion, we should consider another important perspective, which is the fact that the relationship between China and Somaliland, between Taiwan and Somaliland, it also gives a platform to counter China's influence in East Africa. Because China's hard presence in the region is clear in Djibouti, for example, where it has its first overseas military base. Taiwan can't match their military, but it can help build an alternative security partnerships. They have signed Coast Guard maritime security and Red Sea Gulf of Aden cooperation agreements, framed as enhancing Somaliland's maritime sovereignty. And the deal directly challenges China's debt trap diplomacy and its regional strategy, of using Somalia to isolate both nations. So Taiwan uses soft security tools to help Somaliland stand on its own foot rather than fall into Chinese financed dependency. Do you agree with the perspective?
Absolutely right with that, because of course we know that China has the strategy of the China debt trap that of course affects not only the Horn of Africa but also many countries in Africa, and Taiwan just deals with in another way because of course there is another type of relation that insists on Taiwan and Somaliland ties, and because of course you said well initially that Taiwan treats Somaliland as a state and same Somaliland in regards to Taiwan, and so it's not about that. For example, in this case, you mentioned China, right? And that treats you like, for example, I just want to exploit things, and then after that, I'm going to apply the debt traps. No, in this case, it's a different type of relations between the countries, and it's a constructive relation that is built between Somaliland and Taiwan, and it's a different type that it's super strategic in this case. And you say well about, for example, especially Djibouti right now, because of course we do have Beijing that of course is in there with for example, like the port of Djibouti. There is a very important part in the Horn of Africa too. And of course, I think that maybe we do have to discuss also about these things. For example, like in this case, we do have the cooperation that is strategic, especially in the sea, especially in the corridor right now. And the strategic lens is one of the most important things that we have to that we have to consider. And we do see that we have many times in there tensions with other countries, with other nations like Somalia, that is in a certain sense a spectator of the situation between Somaliland and Taiwan. We know that we do have we know that Somalia, Mogadishu in this case, that does not see the relations between Somaliland and Taiwan in a good way. But of course, we can't say we must, in a sense, we must say that of course we do have we have to attach importance to the diplomatic situation that we do have between Somaliland and Taiwan in this case. And so the other important thing that we have to consider is the fact that Somaliland and Taiwan, they both navigate between this gray zone, in this case about the recognition and things like that. And so both Somaliland and Taiwan know that it's very important to come out the isolation. And that's the reason why, of course, they mutually help each other with the MOUs. And as you said, also, especially right now in this fast-growing situation in the sea, that is really important. But in the certain sense, they of course tend to maintain a balanced neutrality and also a balanced relation. Is that right, Michele?
Yeah, I'm completely on your page.
Mm-hmm.
In my opinion, Somaliland can be used to contest China's political messaging in the Horn. On the other hand, this relationship sends a quiet message to the rest of Africa, of East Africa as well, because they don't just do projects. For example, they issue strong public statements rejecting China's sovereignty claims over Taiwan, and they link those claims to concerns regarding regional stability in the Horn of Africa. Somaliland can be turned into a micro megaphone, in my opinion, because from Hargeisa, Taiwan can broadcast another narrative, a counter narrative, in a region where China, as you said, has invested heavily in diplomacy, infrastructure, but also media. So Somalia's reaction, for example, they included moves like banning Taiwanese passport holders, shows that this isn't symbolic theater. It is a real context regarding who gets to define sovereignty and legitimacy in the region. If a non-recognized entity like Somaliland can secure a meaningful cooperation with Taiwan, then other recognized African states can follow suit, in my opinion, if they're willing to withstand Chinese pressure. Because China offers bases, loans, but Taiwan offers technology, a narrative of democratic rules-based cooperation. So it is less about big money, more about capacity, skills, resilience, and a value-based cooperation. Are you on the same page?
Definitely. Yes, of course. Just to add a few things, and you're definitely right with everything, because of course we do have these different relations, as we say, it's between Somaliland and Taiwan. And not to mention the fact that also Taiwan has to offer a lot of things, but not only to Somaliland in this case. I think that there is a wider range of nations that Taiwan can offer things like, for example, the expertise in semiconductors and things like that. And so that's the reason why Somaliland is very open to have relations with Taiwan, because of course they maintain great relation in this case because they can help each other in this case. But I think just to add a few things, we say that of course we have the latest news about the recognition of Israel, about Somaliland and things like that. And things in Somaliland are changing in a very fast way, because of course now Somaliland has, in a certain sense, signaled openness also to the world in this case, and is moving in a very fast way, because of course right now in a certain sense we can say Somaliland is gaining momentum and now wants to act in a different way compared to the past, because now more open to the relations. It now wants more. And of course, we talked about a few months ago about the so-called recognition of Ethiopia too with Somaliland. But of course, it's a really tough process in this case, because of course we do have many difficulties. We remember also the Ethiopia-Somaliland Memorandum of Understanding that was back in 2024. But of course, things are now changing in a different way. And so in this case, we do see that, yes, now Somalia wants to move in a different way because, of course, it wants to better, it wants to increase chances of international recognition. And so in this case, Somaliland, in this case, Hargeisa, knows that it's really important to maintain great relations with Taiwan, but also to enhance relations with other nations, with the so-close nations, but also to the other nations, like, for example, moving overseas, just like the US, and not only the US in this case, but he wants to align with other countries just because, of course, it was strategic partners right now. So everything is changing very fast. And can we just say that, of course, we are in a strange and delicate diplomatic balance that Somalia is trying to maintain and to sustain in this case, and Taiwan maintains these relations with Somaliland, but it's still in progress and still in process, a different way of growing partnership between the two countries. And so, of course, it's very important for Taiwan just to make sure that it has all the roots, in spite of China and in spite of Beijing's efforts to destabilize things in the Horn of Africa, but only the Horn of Africa, also in Africa. And about Somaliland, we know that the strategic position that he has in the Gulf of Aden, and because we do have also to discuss about the Bab el-Mandeb Strait, that holds significant strategic importance in this case. And so everything is changing in a very fast way, and Taiwan is fundamentally different compared, for example, to the latest news that we saw that Somaliland wants to be more open also to the US in this case, because he wants to discuss about strategic ambiguity and things like that. But Taiwan and Somaliland, as I said before, they share pretty much the same values and the same stories. So it's a different kind of strategic relations between maybe Somalia and the US and also to the other nations. And yes, we must continue to discuss about the fast-growing relations between these two countries, especially right now that we are moving to another strategic phase about Somaliland's story.
So, gentlemen, this is fantastic. You did indeed a very complete and exhaustive explanation of the relationship between Taiwan and Somaliland and why it matters and how it evolves. But then there is another question I'd like to ask, since we have 10 minutes left in the interview. How would you characterize actually the exercise of democracy in Somaliland? Do you have a first-hand experience of it? Because we talk a lot about shared values here between Taiwan and Somaliland, but in practice, what does it look like? Do you have any experience of it? Did you witness it? What did you witness about Taiwan, about Somaliland's democracy?
Yeah, unfortunately, I never went to Somaliland, but I dedicated my master's thesis to the history of Somaliland. So I had the possibility to talk with analysts, and not only analysts, political personalities of Somaliland. And it helps me a lot to have a better experience of Somaliland. So as we talk about the political order of Somaliland, it blends modern democratic institutions with traditional clan-based governance. So we have an hybrid model, which is central to the stability of Somaliland.
So can you explain us how that works?
Democratic institutions, we have a Gerti and House of Elders, which is a traditional council that mediates disputes and stabilizes transitions. A multi-party system, which is limited to 3 national parties to prevent clan fragmentation. Regular elections, the last one in 2024, a presidential, parliamentary, local elections held with participation from the Somaliland people, and the locally driven peace building. There is a mix of tradition and modernity, which has produced a political culture that values incremental reform, but also consensus. Somaliland has held several elections, competitive elections, since declaring its independence in 1991. Their elections have been widely praised for their transparency and civic participation. For example, the first one, the presidential election in 2003, which was decided by a margin of fewer than 100 votes, and it was peacefully accepted. Their elections demonstrate a culture of electoral legitimacy that is unusual for an unrecognized state. But the Somaliland institutions are not perfect. They function with a degree of autonomy, accountability, uncommon in the region. If we discuss about the progresses, they include independent electoral commission with a track record of managing complex elections, but also media pluralism with both independent and opposition-leaning outlets that operate in the country. Regarding judicial structures, they handle disputes, maintain basic rule of law, but they are limited at the same time. This climb has helped Somaliland avoid the governance collapse that we see elsewhere in Somalia, but also in the East of Africa as well. In my opinion, there are some key challenges that I'd like to discuss with Guido. For example, the election delays that have happened in the past, clan dynamics, because they help stabilizing the situation, but they also can limit political inclusivity. They can reinforce patronage networks. I'd like to discuss this topic more with Guido. What do you think about it?
Yes, I agree with that. I was thinking about especially the pros. I would say the pros and cons of the Somaliland politics. But before answering to this, to answer June's question, I have never been in Somaliland, unfortunately. But I remember that back in 2020, at least it was 2021, I decided to run a project that was called, and still called, Project Somaliland Italia, because I just wanted, just like my Taiwan's project, I just wanted to make sure that people here in Italy get to know more about Somaliland. That is a nation, that is a state that, of course, is not that much discussed in there. There are not about a lot of information about Somaliland here in Italy, and that's the reason why I just wanted to make to pursue this project, because I just want to in a certain sense to share news about Somaliland in foreign politics, especially the foreign politics. And up until now, yes, I got also the chance with Michele to interview important people and politics, for example, of the Somaliland society, civil society too, that gave us the opportunity to delve into the Somaliland society, how it works, and the foreign politics as well too. And so I got a great chance to discuss with him about the development, the process of development during these years, especially for the foreign part and for the politics and how it works in Somaliland. And just to connect the things now, and I said that we do have some pros and cons in the Somaliland system, democratic system in this case, I would say. And yes, of course, I think that pretty much everyone have weaknesses in a certain sense. But in this case, we do have some cons. Like, for example, you mentioned the elections that was praised pretty much by everyone, but we do have, for example, delays that affect the democratic system in this case. For example, we do have logistical and financial problems because, of course, we already know that Somaliland lacks international recognition, that it's super important for a democratic system. And of course, we do have limited access to external funding. We have technical problems for the elections, and it's not easy to have elections to give elections in a country that it's not recognized. And we have political disputes, not only the financial part that is the main problem, I mean, but also political disputes, because of course we do live in a situation that is really hard to handle, because of course we do have opposition parties. In this case, that we have the clans, that it's really hard to handle that situation with clans too. The National Electoral Commission, and maybe disagreements between parties over timing, the delay of electoral laws. And so we do have also that, for example, we have security and also stability concerns. It can happen, of course, because maybe authorities can justify postponements just to preserve, in that case, stability. But it's very hard to handle and sustain elections especially in Somaliland, but I mean in a country that is not recognized. And so we also have as Michele said, the clan dynamics. That it's absolutely important with that, because we have sub-clans, and we have families that are very dominant in the territory, right? And of course, it's very hard for the voters to support candidates, because they maybe often support candidates from their own clan. They have electoral alliances that maybe are attached to clan coalitions. It's not about ideology, it's about more like what the clan wants me to vote or wants me to do. And so sometimes it can lack of political stability in this case. And the problem is the fact that, of course, the territory is also a part of, it's something that we have to discuss, right? Because of course it's hard, especially in this territory, and to sustain the democratic life, but in a certain sense, in some way, it widely works, but we do have also negative aspects and negative sides, and because it's more like the clans that, in a certain sense, right, Michele, they can stabilize the system, right?
Yeah. Yeah, as you mentioned, the three legally recognized national parties, Ulmiye, Wadani, and the Ka Alliance for Equality and Development, differ on governance, on leadership style, on the economic file, but they converge on one significant issue, which is the recognition of Somaliland. So it includes the idea of maintaining a democratic image to strengthen the recognition case, to present Somaliland as a stable alternative in the Horn of Africa, to support diplomatic outreach, regardless of the party which is in power in a specific time, but also to engage external partners, for example, the US, through coordinated messaging. So even when they disagree on domestic issues, which is normal in a democratic state, they avoid using recognition as a wedge issue. So there isn't a party which accuses another of weakening the recognition cause, because the legitimacy of the state itself is the common ground on which they converge. So this idea reduces fragmentation, and it forces the parties to adopt a common ground position. In my opinion, it helps a lot to help Somaliland maintaining a peaceful democratic image on the international stage.
Michele and Guido, thank you so much for having been with us today, and thank you so much for the wealth of information you gave us on such an unknown part of the world and its meaning for Taiwan. And we hope to have you again soon to discuss it more in details if there are any further developments.
Thank you so much, Julian, for this great opportunity. It was my pleasure and my honor to stay here with you and with Michele. Great pleasure.
Thank you. It has been a pleasure to stay with you and Guido here. And good evening to Taiwanese people.
Taiwan faces constant pressure from China, increasingly through various forms of gray zone warfare. This shifts the focus beyond the military alone. Other domains are growing in importance, and one of them is the Coast Guard, which plays a key role in responding to China's maritime activities. Let's hear from someone who has been looking closely at this.
My name is Jordan Laramore. I'm a recent graduate of National Sun Yat-sen University, and I published a paper with the Global Taiwan Institute exploring Taiwan's white hull diplomacy.
Jordan Laramore explains what he means by white hull diplomacy.
White hull diplomacy it's a form of like law enforcement diplomacy. It prioritizes using white hulls or Coast Guard vessels as opposed to gray hulls, which would be naval vessels, to assert sovereignty, and it serves as a less escalatory way to assert that sovereignty than, say, sending a military vessel. For the content for Taiwan, it usually emphasizes cooperation and maritime rule of law over military force. They have cooperation agreements with nations like the United States, Palau, the Marshall Islands, and Belize. These focus a lot on countering UII, which is illegal activities like illegal fishing, unregulated fishing, and unreported fishing. These focus on reducing or eliminating the illegal fishing activities that these countries are facing challenges with. These agreements also focus on training, like training exchanges between Coast Guard officials. They focus a lot on search and rescue operations, and increasingly on gray zone activities, specifically in the context of Taiwan, against Chinese incursions. For example, they have donated vessels to nations like Palau. They received 2 multi-purpose vessels to help patrol and strengthen their ability to better enforce their domestic laws in their exclusive economic zones. Taiwan has also donated vehicles to the Marshall Islands Marine Resources Authority, and Tuvalu has also received two donated patrol vessels from Taiwan. Taiwan is also normalizing joint Coast Guard patrols and training with Japan and signed an agreement with the United States. And those are some examples of some of the activities Taiwan is doing for Coast Guard diplomacy.
From white hull diplomacy, we can move to the concept of maritime awareness, an issue that concerns Taiwan's Coast Guard among other agencies. Kitsch Liao of the Atlantic Council explains what maritime awareness means.
So maritime domain awareness is your ability to basically monitor, the maritime situation around you, right? And it has a broad definition, and it depends greatly on the utility of which you want to do, right? That would include something along the line of how often the update is, what sort of granularity I can pick up in terms of targets, in terms of objects in the ocean. Are we talking about something as small as a container dropped in the ocean, a dinghy boat, or something as big as a cargo ship, right? So, or even we can even go smaller to search and rescue operations. Like sailors and seamen or pilots that's being in the water, something along that line. So, but generally, it just talks about your ability to sense and be aware and to keep track of objects of interest in the maritime domain that you're interested in.
Dr. Jyh-Shyang Sheu of the Institute for National Defense and Security Research offers his own definition.
Situation awareness is, of course, a huge topic for the military operations. That means, the military unit equipment, they might need a lot of sensors to check the environment, the situation nearby, and so on to make sure they can survive. So, given that China is conducting a lot of different gray zone harassment, including not only aerial incursions in the Taiwanese ADIZ, but also the Chinese Navy, the Chinese Coast Guard, and possibly the maritime militias and so on in maritime area. And we also know that there are some, I would say, this is also a kind of shuttle fleet for cutting the Taiwanese undersea cables and so on. So that means we also need to create enough awareness for the maritime domain. That means we need a lot of sensors. It might be shipborne, airborne, ground-based, or even space domain to make sure we can control or at least enough an awareness for the situation nearby to check that there are no Chinese or some strange vessels are doing something not good. So, for instance, in the last years, the Taiwanese Coast Guard caught around several Chinese cargo ships, which I mean at that time they are trying to cut in the Taiwanese undersea cables, and most of them are in very for instance in very bad condition, which means they are not really transporting some goods, but only for this kind of gray zone harassment. And secondly, normally they close the AIS signals or to use some false AIS information, try to fool the Coast Guard or Taiwanese authorities. And also, one of them even trying to use a metal plate to write another ship ship name. They will change the plate to change the ship name, by replacing the plate, and they will have the different ship name when the Taiwanese Coast Guard is using binoculars and so on to observing the cargo ship. Maybe they will be fooled. They will be fooled by this kind of small tricks. So I mean, in that sense, we need more sensors, not only with the eyeballs of the Coast Guard, but also radar system, EOIR, or some different sensors, and even with some satellite image and so on to create enough again the awareness for that.
So, what is the current situation in Taiwan when it comes to maritime awareness?
I think we are still not enough for that. So, for instance, the Chinese Coast Guard is trying to introduce some drones for their vessels. Maybe those drones might be launched by the ships, from the heliport of ships, but also from the Coast Guard bases and so on to support for the maritime surveillance and observation for long endurance. But that is only a part of it. Besides of that, we still lack of some advanced radar system, or we need more Coast Guard vessels, and we also need some space domain assets for this, some satellite image and so on for this kind of observation or so-called awareness, and also only with drones. That is just a part of a part of the aerial domain. That means we might not only need the unmanned system but also manned systems, because sometimes if they cut the some if the drones just take some photos or videos, sometimes the operators in ground bases might not really able to identify the target or check the details. In that sense, you might still need someone, some manned aircraft to go there and try to check them with the pilot or the area crews themselves. So a comprehensive maritime domain awareness will need a lot of different sensors and multi-layer of the assets. Again, we need shipborne, airborne, ground-based, and space domain, and so on, to make sure we can check the situation nearby Taiwan successfully. Otherwise, the Chinese maritime domain, the Chinese maritime militia, and also Chinese Coast Guard or Chinese Navy could always find a place, some places to do something they want.
Generally speaking, you have a few major sensing methods: radar, IR, and EO optics, right? Electro optics. But with the advent of space domain, we can also use radar. We can also use space-based radars, like synthetic aperture radars from space, moving target indicator to go with it. But also sometimes you want to rely on ships, right? Like commercial ships emit signals that basically authorities could pick up, and these are more convenient if you're talking about in a regulatory situation. But a lot of the times you're thinking more along the line of law enforcement or even national security defense, then that's a little bit different. So that straddles somewhere between national security implications, law enforcement, and also search and rescue. It touches upon all three. In Taiwan specific cases, a lot of these basically what is on the back of the Taiwan Coast Guard. Taiwan Coast Guard is basically in charge of everything that's non-military, extended out to about 24 miles, contiguous zones. That includes ships that's smuggling, that includes cargo containers that's been accidentally or intentionally dropped in the ocean, that includes sometimes Chinese ships that broke the 24-mile contiguous zones. And in the case of an emergency, like a pilot ejection or seaman overboard, they would also have to help locate and coordinate the rescue.
Both guests give us concrete real-world examples.
I think a good example is that in the end of 2024, I think, in the Baltic Sea, the NATO countries, in particular Finland, successfully caught a cargo ship from the shuttle fleet. This is because they can identify it from both the sensors and also open source intelligence and so on to check the information first time, and they have enough time to catch the ship with the Coast Guard and law enforcement. If not, for instance, in the Taiwanese cases, sometimes when the Chinese already caught our already caught the Taiwanese undersea cables and we found something wrong, but at that time it's already too late to get them. So a successful awareness, we always need enough information and sensors to check the situation immediately and react that's effective.
So basically, like all the methods we talked about, each have their problems, right? For Coast Guard, their model right now is basically you have land-based radar stations, and then you have vessels that's going out to on patrol or to respond to emergencies, and then you have helicopters and sometimes drones, right? Your land-based radars could only see so much because there are dead zones around, and also there's the radar horizon to consider. What we're talking about in terms of radar horizon is because the Earth is round, and radio waves travel in straight lines. So after a certain distance, it depends on your elevation, right? If you're just on the ground, after about 20, 30 kilometers out, you're not really seeing something on the surface of the ocean. You're seeing something in the air at that point. So, you'll need something else to do that. Now, Taiwan does have mountains, and, we do have surveillance radars located on mountains to see stuff. But sometimes these are also obstructed by other terrain features. So that's radar, right? And if we're talking about IR passive sensing capacities, they are great because you can sense a lot. You don't have to emit anything, but also you're greatly constricted and constrained by weather conditions, by humidity in the air, by ambient temperature and everything. So what you need is actually a fusion of different sorts of sensors. And a lot of the times we're also talking about how fast you can get these updates, these sort of sensor updates, right? For ships, that's not moving very fast. Maybe what I need is an update every few minutes, and for sensitive targets in the air, that's air domain awareness. But if we're talking about something skimming near the water or like missiles or stuff, then I need like tracks. That means like instant update, real-time updates, right? And so that goes to basically to what we're talking about when we talk about gaps in maritime domain awareness.
Which leads to the key question: what should Taiwan do about all this?
First of all, of course, we need more investment toward this kind of for this kind of asset. Again, the Taiwanese Coast Guard is trying to procure new drones, but I think they still need some manned aircraft for this kind of mission, which they might not really rely on the naval aviation or the Taiwanese Air Force. That is because when talking about gray zone or hybrid warfare, that means we are still in peacetime. So the role of the military forces might be largely limited. And sometimes, because the Chinese harassment is combined with different units, also including military forces, so that means the Taiwanese Air Force and Navy might also be quite busy at that time. So that means the Coast Guard needs their own assets also for manned aircraft, and also more ground-based and shipborne sensors for that.
I think Taiwan should try to expand the scope of their Coast Guard diplomacy. I think one thing they should do is the Coast Guard is undergoing a modernization process. So they are trying to enhance their capability to counter Chinese gray zone activities and counter illegal fishing. One thing they can do is, because they are modernizing their Coast Guard, they have to decommission a lot of older vessels that they no longer have a purpose for. A lot of these vessels are still usable. Ships can usually be used for decades at a time. I think a good thing for Taiwan to consider maybe modernizing these vessels, because a lot of them are still seaworthy, and donating them to allies and partners who need to enhance their ability to do maritime patrols.
Currently, the understanding that we have, the ability of Taiwan to maintain these tracks, to update these situations, is insufficient when it comes to tracking the movements of, let's say, China's maritime militia, let's say certain activities that maritime militia or Chinese fishing vessels that would intentionally do to test out, Taiwan's capability to pick these up. And specifically, some of the stuff we're talking about here also involves SAR, search and rescue, right? And if we pay close attention to recent talks about pilot rescues, specifically the last time when the F-16 went down near Hualien, they always talked about sending out C-130s to use flares, for example, to light up the ocean to help with rescue. Generally speaking, that's not a good idea. Again, if you're using human eyes to scan the horizon to see what's going on near the ocean, then you're in big trouble, because there are other things to do that. you have electro-optic sensors, you have IRs, you have synthetic aperture radars, and you have platforms that could synthesize information of all three because they have them on board. And like in this particular application, time is also of the essence, right? We understand like when pilot hit the water, even though water near Taiwan is not that cold, if they were to be in the water for 24, 48 hours, then, like they still run the risk of losing body temperature and all that. And so a lot of these gaps need to be plugged and needs to be done in such a way that it's economical, because Taiwan also has other priorities, especially considering, all the emergencies like caps and responses that Taiwan military has to do. That's on the defense side of things. So far, we've talked about Coast Guard. On the defense side of things, right? Like the military has to send out jets, has to send out high-end sensing assets every time Chinese send something over. And that's partially because what we're talking about here, right? The inability to keep constant real-time tracks of Chinese military assets around Taiwan. That's only partially. The other reason they would say is because, well, we have to have a response. We have to show them. But again, like, if they want to talk about revamping this to basically like keep the attrition of high-end equipment down during this gray zone period, during China's gray zone operations, so they could be better prepared for hot war, the first thing you need to fix is essentially maritime domain awareness, your capability, your ability to track all of these, because then you have options to respond.
We will meet again next week for a new episode of Taiwan versus the World.